Hey, welcome to The Last Game Hunter. Or am I The Last Game Hunter? You know what? Who am I? Everybody knows me as The Last Game Hunter, but who am I really? And who are you? This guy thinks he's The Last Game Hunter. I'm The Last Game Hunter. What do you mean you're The Last Game Hunter? I'm The Last Game Hunter. How can there be two Last Game Hunters? I'm very confused. Maybe this is our heads. Whatever, dude. No, man, I'm The Last Game Hunter. That's what this show is all about today. Who is The Last Game Hunter? Where did he come from? How did he end up on YouTube? How did he start collecting games? What started this game thing? Let's find out. So, who is The Last Game Hunter? Well, my name is Paul. I was born September 1972. I'm 45 years old. From Newfoundland, Canada. And how did I get into video games? Because when I grew up, the only thing that was really around was Atari when I was small. And we didn't really have a lot of money to throw around, so I didn't have an Atari. We mostly played all of our stuff and went outdoors and did real things instead of the wonderful world of video games. Didn't really exist as much at that point in time. And then I started sleeping over at a friend's house, and he had an Atari, and then another one had a ColecoVision, and I kind of got hooked on like the Defender, Pac-Man, and then the ColecoVision with the steering wheel and turbo and stuff. It was just crazy. I couldn't even believe this stuff existed. But I had to go to a friend's house to do this. So as I got a little older, I went and bought an Atari. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Because it was still biggest. It was one of the biggest things. And I remember going to Kmart. Yeah, we don't have Kmart anymore. I think it's still in the States. We lost Kmart a long time ago. And they had bins with Atari games in it. And I remember, I think the last Atari game I bought was Double Dragon, which was pretty darn cool. The graphics was pushed to the limits, even though it was probably still Stickman type looking thing. But I was amazed. And I was, wow, this was cool. But I'm a Sega fan, so Sega didn't start this for me. I knew Sega by titles like Turbo and so on, but I never, Sega didn't have a home console. Who was Sega? Nintendo didn't really have anything. I just knew them from Mario Brothers on the Atari. It wasn't even Sega that started it again. It was that darn Commodore 64. I had to have a 64. And I wasn't like great kid. I was always fighting and not being the best. Always in trouble. And anytime I wanted something, I had to work for it. My parents would never give me anything that I wanted in that category. I had to work for it. I even remember I wanted a motorcycle one time, a dirt bike for off-roading and stuff. I had to buy this piece of junk. And you had to push it around more than I could drive it because it kept dying. And after I got my bike and had to work for it, my brothers got their bikes bought and paid for that worked by my parents. Same thing. Time to have a video game console. I wanted a Commodore 64 really bad. And, sorry, I had to earn it. I would get my Commodore 64 when I could get it. And I finally saved up and got a VIC-20 because I couldn't afford a Commodore 64. So my stuff wasn't much better than the Atari I was playing with, to be honest. It wasn't a great machine other than that I could start programming. That kind of started my whole thing into the future of wanting to be into the business that I'm in, which is computers. Now, I went through a bit of a worse spot where I got thrown out of my house at 15 years old and had to go and live with a friend that had a spare room. Their parents took me in. Had to pay rent, try and do high school, get through high school, and that's when I found my love for gaming. My real love. He had a Nintendo. He was pretty decently well off. He had a bunch of games. We'd be playing Mario Brothers, or we'd be playing, I remember volleyball with the 4-score thing where you had 4 different players and his sister and everybody be involved. And it was a lot of fun. Plus, he always had friends over all the time, so we always had enough people to play, like, volleyballs or the hockeys or whatever. And we played a lot of that, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And then I found the Sega Master System. It was all over. This person was selling a Master System, and I'm like, Sega makes a console? Had to have it. So I bought it. Wow. This was the thing for me. I was going through some hard times. I had a friend that had a Master System. It was a girl, and I would go over until I could get this Master System. And it was a tough time. My sister had died. She was killed in a car accident. And between being thrown out a little later on, car accident, I was having a pretty rough time. And I think the Sega Master System was a out for me. It was a game system I could play at this girl's house, and I really enjoyed going over and being around this girl. She was positive, and the system was really cool. Then later on, when I finally got my hands on the one that I wanted, it came with a bunch of games. It was a life changer. I was thrown out of my house. I, didn't have anything other than this Sega. And I think that's where my love for Sega grew. Now from there, I continued to still, collect and move on with the Sega love, but I slipped into this whole era of PC gaming. PC gaming for me was probably the biggest thing ever. I played everything from Wing Commanders. Wing Commanders are probably like my favorite thing that I've ever played on a PC, bar none. Just amazing, amazing games. I remember going over to my buddy's house, and this guy had it all. He had the big stereo system hooked up and everything on a 486 computer, and he turned on Wing Commander. The original Wing Commander, not even like the newer ones with the better graphics or anything. And I was like, oh, this opened my eyes. So I really slipped away from console gaming pretty hardcore. Built the computer, and from there I was just gaming. Then went through a bit of the Genesis stage, the Saturn not so much, but I went through a bit of it. Kind of slipped away again till the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast actually started me collecting. So, but I wasn't hardcore. That was my start. And collecting for the Dreamcast, and then I started collecting for the Game Gear, and then years later I started collecting for the Master System and complete it. And the Master System I had to complete. You need to understand that that system got me through the death of my sister, got me through being thrown out of my house and living on my own since I was 15 years old. And I think if it wasn't for that system, I could have been in jail. I don't know what would have happened. But it definitely helped me out. So thank you, Sega. Love you, Master System. But I just wanted everybody to know a little bit about me. How I became this big collector. It's only because of love for a console that got me through some bad times. And deep down in my heart, I knew I had to collect that system all over again. And I did. Because I had lost it all through moves. I didn't have any of it. All I had after the year 2000-ish was my Dreamcast. And I'd love to complete that collection, but we all know how expensive that would be. So, I'm Paul, the Last Game Hunter. Now you know a little bit more about me. I want people to know me. I don't want to get into things too much. Starting to feel a little emotional on the whole thing. But I think people should know who they're talking to, or they're watching, or they're emailing and having a chat with. And this is who I am. And I hope that I can continue to entertain you guys. I love what I'm doing. I love this YouTube thing. I love this community. I think it's great. I think that the small guys and a little bit bigger but small guys, we're all sticking together really well. And I think that is awesome. Thank you guys for all the love. Last Game Hunter. Till next time.